advanced IOC, we'll be learning how to create beans in different ways by using factory beans, factory methods, instance methods, etc. Then we'll be seeing the life cycle of a bean post processor, and also custom editors. Okay, and after this we'll talk about Spring expression language. Just like we have expression language in JSP, we have Spring expression language in new feature. Then we'll see Java bean configuration. To avoid XML configuration, instead of declaring bean tags inside an XML, we can declare all the beans inside Java class only using annotations. We'll see that. These are the topics which we'll be covering under advanced IoT. Okay, so just pick up the basics. Assume that there is a class like this, product, which is having name, price, status and getters, and there are two constructors, and there are two subclasses. Battery is extending product and disk is extending product. Battery is having a rechargeable extra variable, and also disk is having capacity, status and getters. That's all. These are three things. We'll see with this a lot of examples with these classes. Suppose I declare a bean like this. Bean ID is equal to AAA, computer trading at shop at battery, and there are three dependencies for battery: name and price, which are inherited from the superclass product, and rechargeable. And for CD, under bean I declared. For disk, there also name and price are injected from the inherited ones in capacity. Suppose if this is a bean configuration, what will happen if I say application context object dot get bean AAA? See here, whenever I say factory dot get bean AAA, what will happen internally? AAA means this one, right? Default constructor is called and battery object is created, and then setters are called, right? Similarly for disk also, default constructor is invoked, setters are called. This is happening internally, right? But if this is a constructor which is having two parameters will be called for battery, and then set rechargeable is called. Then similarly constructor which is like two parameters for disk is called, then set capacity is called, like this, right? This you know already. Next, suppose if I have a class like this. Once you know all this, let us discuss other things. Suppose if you have a class like this, a product creator, in which you have a static method called create product, which is taking some parameter. Don't worry about what is the parameter, and it is returning product. Now I want the bean to be created by invoking this static method. Generally beans were earlier created by calling either a parameterized constructor or default constructors earlier, and initialized by using setter injections or constructor injections. But now here this is the class. Now I want a product, and I want a bean to be created by calling the static method of this class. See here in this case, if you see this code, if the product ID is equal to AAA, it is returning an object of battery. If it is CD or RW, it is returning an object of disk, right? See now, this is the way. Bean, this is the class product creator, and factory method is equals to the method which is creating object is called as factory method. Factory method is equals to create product, and for this create product a parameter has to pass. You are passing it through constructor. Constructor does not necessarily mean that it has to be passed to constructor only. The arguments which are used for initializing are called as constructor. So this is a way of configuring a bean by using a factory method. See this class again. Class having a static method. You want a bean to be created by calling a static method. See, class and factory method is equals to create product. Here also same thing, but the value is different. CDRW. Now this bean, if I say factory dot get bean AAA, which object will I get now? AAA means battery, right? So CDRW means discount. So now we are creating beans by using a static factory method. This is the way.
Why static? Non-static is
Non-static, next one is it. If it is static method, this is the way. That's why you are telling class name and the method name. On this class, this method will be called with this parameter. Whatever this method is returning, that will be returned as a bean. For create product, there is a parameter, right? That will be passed to create product. That's what I am saying. Constructor arg does not necessarily mean it should be passed only for constructor. Only for constructor, what we pass it for initializing. Similarly, here also we are using this parameter for initializing either a battery or a disk. Constructor arg means it's used for creating. Right? This is the syntax. So when you want to invoke a static method. Next, you want to invoke a instance method. Okay. See, this is the product creator now. Inside product creator, you are having a map of products. Just see this example clearly, and this is setter method, right? So I can inject a map inside this product creator. You know how to inject a map by using a map tag. Okay. Then here is a non-static method. Previously the create product earlier, which is our static. Here is a non-static method which is taking a product ID and based on some logic, actually it is looking from the map. Map should be configured already with key and values, right? It is actually looking inside the map and returning it accordingly. Don't worry about what is there inside. Okay. Now the point is, this is a non-static method. I want to create a bean by invoking a non-static method. Earlier we create a bean by invoking a static method. Now non-static method. See how it is. If I want to configure this product creator as a bean inside my XML, it is having any dependencies product creator? Is a map. See how I am injecting. First I am creating a bean for product creator. Products is a map which is having entry for AAA, it is a battery bean. For CDRW it is a now see here, bean factory bean is equals to product creator. It's the same as this ID product creator. On this bean there is a method to be called. Factory method is create product, and this is a value. So now what application context will do? It will use this bean dot create product, and this parameter is passed. Whatever it is returning will be the bean, right? So this is the way to create a bean using instance method. Okay. Yeah. Static. Yeah. Here a class is specified. Factory method. Oh no, this is class. But in our next one, factory bean. That's the difference. Here we are giving reference of another bean. There we are giving class. So in this case, if you are just giving class, this class dot create product, class name, static method, right? It will be invoked on this class by passing it. But for invoking instance methods, it is on a bean. So product creator bean dot create product, and this parameter is passed. Whatever it is returning will be returned, right? Okay, let us see a very practical, where it can be practically applied. Suppose I have a class called person. I'll just quickly show you. I am having a class called person, and I have a date of birth, private date DOV suppose, and just I'll write getters and setters. Now I want to inject a data object. Right? So you know, in simple date format object dot, there's a method called parse. Date format dot parse will give you a data object or no.
Format will give us
New simple date format. Yes, I'm also confused. New simple date format dot format will give you string and parse will give you data object. Now I want to inject this data object by using simple date format object. Okay, so see here how I'll do it. I'm just creating a new XML file quickly for this. Other XML file is too complicated now. Okay, now you see, you know how to create a bean for simple date format. Bean id is equals to sdf, class is equals to simple date format. For this format is required, constructor value is equals to, let's say y hyphen hyphen dd. This is a simple data object, right? Now I want to create a bean for person. ID is equals to person, class is equals to person, then it's having a property DOB. It has to be injected with an object of date. So I am writing a inner bean. This is a inner bean. Class is equals a bean, or factory bean is equals to SDF, factory method is equals to parse or parse or format. And for parse, what is required? Constructor arg value is equals, suppose today's date is 16 hyphen 08 right, 2011 hyphen 08 hyphen 16, right? Is this the way? So it will invoke sdf dot parse. Parse will take this parameter string and return the data object. That data object is injected inside DOB. So this is a very practical example of how to use a factory bean factory method. Any doubts? Later in the discussion it will come automatically. How to, I just want for DOB, it's of type date, right? I just wanted to give the value as string. The string has to be converted to data object automatically. Yes, string will do it by the use of custom headers. That we'll see how to avoid this bean tag. Later we'll see by using custom headers. It will convert the string to data object. Later we'll see. Okay. So once you know this, suppose if you are working on a Java EE based application, you have some object in the JNDA. Suppose you want a data source object. Generally, if you are working with an application server, the data source will be bound inside JNDA, or if you are working in a EJB project, your EJB will be bound inside JNDA, right? Now what I want to do is, I want to get the reference of the EJB. Generally what we do is a new initial context. So we pass all the required parameters. Then JNDA, then initial context object dot lookup will provide the JNDA, right? But now I don't want like that. I just want to specify the JNDA name. Automatically Spring should look up the JNDA and return me the object whichever has been returned from the JNDA. For that purpose, there is a class called JNDA object factory, right? How to use this JNDA object factory? Let me give a simple example. Assuming that I have a data source in my JNDA. Okay, see here, I will write a bean ID is equals to say DS data source, class is equals to JNDI object factory bean. It's a factory bean, you observe. Factories means they will create objects. Factory bean property name is equals to JNDI name, value is equals to whatever you want, some XYZ. Suppose if the JNDA name is XYZ, you give it. Now if XYZ is the name of the JNDA in my JNDI, if I say factory.getBean DS, I should get the data source object, right? So this JNDI object factory bean is very convenient when you want to look up a bean inside the JNDI, right? Generally, if you take here factory.getBean SDF, what object I will get? Simple date format. But if I say factory.getBean DS, will I get an object of JNDI factory bean? No. This factory bean will create some object and return it, right? Means in this case JNDI object factory bean will look up inside the JNDI, whatever it got from the JNDI it is written. In JNDI we can have different types of objects also. I can have an EJB, I can have a data source or anything, right? So the written type object will be an object. Any doubts how to use it? Okay, and again JNDI factory bean is one thing, and proxy factory bean. Proxy factory bean is again a factory bean. It also creates proxies, as the name says. It will create proxies for your objects. Next, in AOP, aspect oriented programming, we are going to use this proxy factory bean to generate our own proxies. Later we'll see it. So I want you to understand factory beans are used for producing some other beans, right? So there are some predefined beans like JNDI object factory bean to look up inside the JNDI, proxy factory bean to create a proxy, and local session factory bean to create a session bean. Session bean means in EJBs. In EJBs we have stateless session beans, stateful EJBs, stateful session beans, right? So if you want directly to work with session beans, then you can use this. Okay, if you are integrating your application with EJB, Spring with EJB, then this will go, right? Like that, I want you to understand factory beans are used for producing objects, right? If you want to write your own class like JNDI object factory bean, you can do so, but you need to extend a class called abstract factory bean, right? Let me write my own JNDI factory bean. Suppose if I have to write a factory bean of my own, which will look up inside the JNDI, how do I write it? Just see here. I'm writing a new class. My JNDI object factory bean extends abstract factory bin, we need to here I'll write object. We need to implement here this factory bin has two methods. Abstract factory bin, whenever we're extending, we have to implement two methods: create instance and get object type. This get object type is used to understand what type of objects it is producing. What type of objects? See here, I am assuming that, suppose if my JNDA factory bin is producing only data source objects. Okay. Now if I say data source here, normal JNDA factory bin returns object, but just to distinguish, if my object factory bin is of type data source, here the return type should be data source. Okay. Now here I'll create private data source ds, and this abstract factory bin will be for what objects? Will be supporting only for data source objects. So here you should say ds dot means this factory bin produces objects of this type. Okay, and here you have to write the code for creating initial context object, looking up and initialize this ds and return the ds. Assume that here you are creating an object of initial context and then initializing ds dot ds is equals to initial context dot result, right? So this is how to write your own factory bin. Now once you have written this factory bin, you can use it like this only, right? But what is the JNDA? Here I need to inject JNDA private string JNDA name, give the setter method, okay. Now my JNDA factory bin is having a dependency called JNDA name, which I can inject through XML by using this, right? So this is how a factory bin works. Here I have a class product and there are some static final fields, AA is pointing to battery object, CDRW is pointing to disk object, right? Now I want a bean by invoking the static fields. I want product dot AAA, whatever it is returning, I want that to be returned. See here, bean ID is equals to AAA, class is equals to field retrieving factory bin. This is also a factory bin, it will produce some objects, and for that there is a dependency static field. What is the static field? Com dot training dot shop dot product dot a, product dot a. So whatever this static field is pointing to will be written. Now if I say factory dot get bin AAA, I will get an object of what this AAA is pointing to, battery. So this is a way to retrieve, declare beans from static fields. Sure. But there is a shortcut for it. there is a shortcut for it. You can use util schema, just like I showed you how to use context schema. You can use util schema, util colon constant, and the static field. This is the bean name, whatever you want, and the static field. This is the shortcut. Instead of using field retrieving factory bean, the shortcut is using util colon constant. Now if I say factory.getBean AAA, I will get an object which is static variable AAA is pointing. Yeah.
Whatever tag and maybe
Okay. Scopes of a bean. There are various scopes of a bean. What do I mean by scope of a bean? Lifetime of a bean, right? Okay. Tell me, what is a container? You might have used the container, the word container many times.
instances and which will read the XML file. Whatever the configuration will be.
Okay, yes, correct. Yes, in servlets there are servlet containers, EJB container, right? Like that you might have seen lot of containers. Basically, container is something which manages life cycle. Something which manages life cycle can be called as a container. Now, my Spring is having two types of factories. Classes which are implementing bean factory is first type. Classes which are implementing application context is second type of factories. These factories will manage the life cycle of the beans also. They will initialize instructions, everything is there. You will see it next. So these factories can also be called as containers, right? So Spring comes up with, I can now restate my words. Spring comes up with two types of containers. Classes which are implementing bean factory are first type of containers. Classes which are implementing application context interface are second type of containers. They manage the life cycle of beans. Now let us try to understand what is the scope. Once you understand containers, I will carry the word container to the next topics. Now let us try to understand scope. What do I mean by scope? These are the various scopes. I will give an example for each. Okay. Suppose you have a shopping cart like this. Okay. Shopping cart which is having an instance variable list of products. You can add an item which is adding items dot add. You can get item which will come list of products. Right. Now if I configure this as a bean, shopping cart, I configured shopping cart as a bean. I configured two beans. One is battery, one is this, and another also is this with different values. These are the configurations. Now see here what happens in the code. I created application context which reads from the XML. Factory.getBean AAA. AAA is of type. AAA means is of what type? AAA is configured to be of battery. But battery is also is extending product. So I am typecasting it. So I got one battery and CD read RW David, right? Then I got shopping cart also. Shopping cart is just a normal bean. Now cart1 dot add item. AAA I added. Cart1 dot add item CD RW I added. So now if I print cart1 contains get items, it will print what? Both AAA and right? Again I am saying context dot get bean. Again same shopping cart is ID, right? Again same. Now to the cart2 I am adding dvdrw, and now I am printing cart2 dot get items. What will it print? Will it print AAA, CDRW and DVDRW or only DVDRW? All the three. Because by default container will assume that all the beans declared inside the XML are singletons. Singleton means What is a singleton class? A class which can, for which we can create only one object is called as a singleton class. By default, Spring factories will assume that all the beans are singletons. It will never try to create a second object of the bean. It will create only one object, right? As I told, application context will preload, means eagerly load all the beans, right? So when application context object is created at this point, shopping cart object is already created. Whenever you say get bin, it is just retrieving the reference of that bin only, which is in memory. So when you said for the first time get bin shopping cart, you got the reference of the shopping cart which is in memory. You add two items. Again when you said get bin, you got the reference of same bin. It is not creating a new bin even though you said get bin. So it's the same shopping cart you added DVD RW. So in this case it will print all three items in the second case, right? So what you need to understand is, by default the containers, Spring containers will treat all the objects, all the beans, not objects, all the beans declared as singletons. It will never try to create a second object. Whenever we call get bin for second time or third time, when in same ID, it will return the same object. Beans are created at the startup, right? So this is the output, right? By default, whether you say or not, scope is equal to singleton. For the bean tag, scope is equal to singleton by default. But now, whenever you say get bin, you want a new bin. This is a requirement. Then you have to set the scope as prototype. So now, if I set the scope as prototype, what will be the answer for when it prints cart2.get items? Only one item, the latest one, right? And then the other values are also there. Request scope is used only in web applications. One bin per request. Session is also used in web applications. One bin per session, right? This global session is only valid in portal application. In portal application only this global session has a meaning. So in portal application, this is one instance per global session, right? These are the various scopes. Basically, by default, all the beans are treated as singletons. Okay, now I have a doubt. I told application context will eagerly load all the beans, right? Will all the beans be eagerly loaded now in this case? In this case, if I specify scope as the prototype, will it be eagerly loaded now with shopping cart? No, because whenever I say get bin, a new bin has to be created, right? Prototype means every time whenever I call get bin, I want a new bin. So for if I say prototype, application context will not create this bin at the startup. Only singleton beans are created at the startup by application context. Okay. Next, let us talk about initialization and destruction of a bean. Now I'll come up with an example. I'll show you with an example. I will create a new project for this. You can also, I'm creating a new Spring project. Life cycle also. Next. Here in the libraries, I already have created a library, user library, with all the libraries which I gave. Finish. I want to create a class called shopping cart. In shopping cart, what we generally do, we have methods like add to cart. We'll add a lot of items to cart, and finally we'll check out. So in my shopping cart, I will have some methods like add to cart and checkout. And now I have a requirement. Before I check out, before a checkout method is called, whenever checkout method is called, I want to log the time at which checkout has been called by the user. This is a simple requirement, right? So in this example, after writing the code, you'll understand how I'll show a demo of initialization restriction. First, I'll create a class called shopping cart. Package, I'll make it as com.sapient, and here I'll create a class shopping cart. I'll write a method public void checkout. Here shopping cart will have a list of items. In this example, I am not interested in all the list and all. I am interested in writing the log file, writing the log. So here I'll create private string file path, in which file to log, and I'll create private say buffered writer, right, and I will create get setter method only for file path. Okay. Inside checkout method, I'll write system.out.println checking out, simply. And as I said, my requirement is what? To write a log. Writer dot write checking out at plus new date. That's it. This is a simple code which I want to write. So where am I initializing buffered writer? I am not initializing the buffered writer, but where am I initializing file path? I can inject it through XML, but buffered writer I am not initializing, right? Okay. I will write a method public void initialize cart, and here I can write writer is equals to new buffered writer, which takes a new file writer, and I'll specify the file count. This is throwing some exception. Okay, let it be thrown. Okay, now I want to declare this shopping cart as a bean inside XML and then inject file path, and I'll show you. Quickly I'll create new XML, new Spring Bean configuration file. I'll say lifecycle as XML file name, next, finish. Here I'll declare shopping cart as a bean. id is equals to cart, class is equals to shopping cart, and it is having a dependency, so I am injecting that file path. Value is equals to something like fcolon / x log.txt in my f drive I wrote. Already demo class, new class, demo to show the demo. I'll take main here. Now I'll create an object of application context. Application context is equals to new class path application context, class path XML application context, and the file name is lifecycle.xml. Then context dot get bean, the ID is cart, whatever I give that. Shopping cart, cart is equals to, and I'll type cast it. Then I'll say cart dot checkout. It's throwing some exception, I'll throw it. Okay. Now what I did, I just got the cart. When I get the cart is injected with file path, right? File path is initialized, but this method is not called, right? If I call the checkout method, what is happening? Will it cause null pointer exception? Writer will be null if this method is not called, right? I'll get null pointer exception if I run this now. A null pointer exception because writer is null. So if you don't want to get null pointer exception, this initialize cart method has to be called, right? But when at what point? Whenever I say factory dot get bean cart, tell me parameter is default constructor is called, then injections are done. After all injections are done, then only you want this to be executed. If this method is called before injections are done, file path again will be null. So you want this method to be called after bean is constructed, after all dependencies are injected, right? So if you want to write any initializing code in your bean, then your bean has to implement an interface. Implements initializing bean, and you have to implement a method called after property set. As the name says, this method will be called after all the properties are set, right? So here I will call initialize cart. So this is how to initialize your bean. Your class should implement initializing bean and override after property set. In this you can call whatever you want. This will be called after properties set, after all injections are done. Now I will run it. Let us see what will happen. Yes, checking out, no exception. If I see in my F drive, definitely a file, log file will be there. Log. But why is it 0 KB? Because I didn't flush it. I'm using buffered writer, is it? I didn't flush it. Okay. I could have flushed it, no problem. But now I have opened a writer. Do we need to close the writer? So I want, when this bean is, when should I close this writer? When this bean gets destroyed, right? So I want some code to be executed during destruction, right? So then what I need to do is I need to make my class to implement another thing called as disposable wheel, and I need to implement another method here called as destroy. Here in this case I can say writer dot close whatever destruction code I want to write. So these are things you need to understand. If you want to initialize, your bin should implement initializing bin, and you need to override after property set. Here you have to write all the initializing code. This method will be called after all injections are done, and this will be called destroy method will be called before destroying, right? But this is not a good way to initialize and destroy a bin, because this is my class which is having business logic. If it is implementing Spring specific interfaces, then can I use this class without Spring? No. If my class which is containing business logic is implementing Spring specific interfaces, I cannot use this class outside Spring, right? So my code becomes Spring dependent, which is not the aim of Spring. You should be able to run this code even without Spring also, right? The main problem with EJB, if you have worked with EJBs, the main problem with EJB is EJB can run only inside EJB container, but EJB cannot run outside EJB container. Spring don't want such a thing. The code which you develop using for Spring application should be run even without Spring. That is the aim of Spring. So if they mandate you to implement Spring specific interfaces, again your code is dependent on Spring API, which is not the Spring framework want, right? So this is not a good practice. There is another method. You need not implement these interfaces. Okay, I'll just remove this override so that it will not show any errors. I'll remove this. Okay, now what I want is this initialize card should be called after all injections are done, and this should be called before destroying, right? In the XML I'll say simply init method is equals to initialize card, destroy method is equals to whatever. The names of the methods you can keep anything. You have to specify what is the method to be called during initialization and what is the method to be called during destruction. That's it. Your bin need not implement this interfaces. This appears to be a good way, right? There is another way also. You need not specify this init method and destroy method. And you need not make your bin to implement initializing bin disposable bin. On the top of this method, you can annotate with post construct. Means this should be called after construction is done, after all the bin is constructed and all injections are done. And you can annotate this method which you want to get executed before destroying as pre-destroy, means before destroying. But if these annotations have to work, you need to register a bin class is equals to common annotation bin post processor. Again you saw the post processor. Earlier you saw post process. Auto void annotation bin post processor. If auto void annotation has to be recognized, auto void annotation bin post processor. If required annotation has to be recognized, required annotation bin post processor. If these annotations like post construct and pre-destroy has to be recognized, you need this common annotation bin post processor to be declared. Or yeah, or there is a shortcut. Instead of this, you can use this context namespace and then simply you can specify context colon annotation config. That's it. This will register the same bin. It's equivalent to writing this bin. Okay. So these are the three ways to initialize and destroy a bin. Yeah, this is a flow for our application. If you are using application context, only this is the only difference.